following is a presentation of the Falcon Media Sports Network, WBGU 88.1 FM, and BG Falcon Media. Good afternoon. Welcome back to another edition of the Zig Zone, the only radio show devoted to Bowling Green athletics. I'm Holden Ruck here to host today, and I'm joined by a star-studded cast of Falcon Media Sports Network personalities. To my farthest left, Tyler Cavalets here, who's going to be talking primarily about some soccer for us today.
My favorite sport to talk about, soccer. Men's and women's, both teams really in a good spot, I think. I think the women's are in a better spot than people think, and men's are set to do something special this year.
All right, we got Chaz McNeil, one of our volleyball beats. Chaz?
No better day to talk about Bowling Green volleyball than today. 5-0 in the MAC. So excited.
Rejoining us this week, Mr. Reese Patrikas, our football expert.
If you would have told me a couple weeks ago that Bowling Green is the best football team wearing orange and brown, I would have said you're crazy, but here we are.
Always topical. And, of course, last but certainly not least, Mr. Ben Korak, another one of our volleyball experts, as well as our hockey guy.
Yeah, hockey took two over the weekend. Great start to their season. Non-conference schedule. They're going into exhibition, so it's going to be fun. Looks pretty good.
Awesome. Well, we've got a loaded show today as we go into Bowling Green and several other colleges' fall breaks here for Monday and Tuesday. We're going to get to the action with football in just a minute, but first we're going to talk about what's happening next door in our sister studio, Falcon Radio. You can tune into Falcon Radio this month for Rocktober, featuring your favorite classic rock hits from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and you can tune into Falcon Radio on bgfalconmedia.com. We're going to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Zig Zone on WBGU 88.1 FM.
The BG News is Bowling Green State University's campus newspaper, published Wednesday, offering items of general interest to the broader campus community, including top local campus and city news, and state, regional, national, and international news events of significance. Key Magazine and The Obsidian are magazines that print once a semester. The BG News, publishing weekly information and entertainment from Bowling Green State University.
This is Ben Korak, and you are listening to 88.1 FM WBGU Bowling Green, home of the Falcon Media Sports Network.
Welcome back to the Zig Zone, your source for all things going on BG athletics. We're going to go ahead and get right into the action without delaying any further. So, Reese, take us through what happened.
Yeah, so BG football walking out of Akron with a 27-20 victory. They did it in certainly a fashion. A win is a win. I won't dance around that. It's good to be 1-0 in the Mid-American Conference, but there were a couple moments in that game that had a couple people scared. But statistically, just looking at everybody, it looked like everyone did a pretty good job on paper. Connor Bazelak, 24-30, passing 268 yards. The only big thing on that stat line of his, and maybe it's not 100% his fault, but he was sacked 4 times. Not something that we've really seen happen to Connor throughout the last couple weeks of the season. Sacked 4 times. Jason Patterson, 18 carries, 52 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. Harold Fannin, 2 carries, 37 yards, had the would-be game winner late in the fourth quarter, and then he also added on 9 catches for 135 yards through the air. Now he's just 26 yards away, or I guess 27 yards away from setting Bowling Green's career receiving yards by a tight end record. And then defensively, it was there was a lot of what we saw, I think, in the Old Dominion game where it looked like there wasn't 100% execution out there on the field. But the defense, I will say, They stepped up when they absolutely had to. And yeah, 27-20, 1-0 in the Mid-American Conference. Not too much you can complain about.
Yeah, certainly. And what can we say about Harold Fannin that we haven't already? I mean,
there's not a whole lot left to say about number 0 on offense for Bowling Green. I mean, I've been saying it for I think 4 weeks now that he's the best tight end in the country, and he's further proving that. He's averaging over 135 yards per game, which is the best mark in the country. I haven't looked at the national rankings yet, but last I looked, he was 6th in the country among all pass catchers in receiving yards. I'll have to take a look when we step aside to our next break to see where he's at. But last I looked, he was just 20 yards behind Colorado superstar Travis Hunter, which is unbelievable that Harold Fannin and Travis Hunter are in the same conversation. But yeah, he got added to the watch list for the Biletnikoff Award last week, which is an unbelievable honor. There's been a lot of great receivers and players who have won that award and went on to have great careers in the NFL. So I don't think there's really a whole lot else you can say about Harold Fannin other than the fact that he's just purely one of the best athletes I think I've ever seen in my lifetime, and he's also purely one of the best athletes that I think has ever stepped foot on campus here in Bowling Green.
That's exactly where I was going to start to go with that. You really do have to think at some point, I mean, he's really encroaching, if not on that Mount Rushmore of Bowling Green athletics. I mean, what he's done is just pretty mind-blowing to me. Talk about the absence of Terrion Stewart. A bit of a head-scratcher to me.
Yeah, so I noticed during last week's game against Old Dominion that it didn't really look like he was 100%. It didn't look like he was necessarily running with the same power and strength that he usually does. So I was shocked, but I wasn't necessarily surprised to see Terrion as questionable because I don't know exactly what kind of ankle injury he has, but if it's something like a sprain, that's something that's very, very tough to get back to 100% from, especially if you're playing in between. You know, you had the Penn State game off, but then you went right back in against Texas A&M, and maybe he got dinged up there again. You went back in the Old Dominion game, and maybe he got it banged up a little bit more. And injuries like that involve joints and ligaments are pretty tough to 100% recoup from without weeks or months with little to no strain.
And I'll open this one up too. This certainly doesn't have to be just a Reese question, but from what you've seen from the Falcons is your comfort level going forward if Terrion Stewart's not able to go in these key games, NIU coming up, Toledo a few more weeks down the road?
Yeah, I mean, Jason Patterson, I think, has done a pretty good job in relief. Now up to 3 rushing touchdowns on the season. He had 2 yesterday against Akron. I'm comfortable with Patterson going in there, and I think he's a better pass blocker than Terrion is, and we've heard multiple people say that. We have Connor Bazelak on record saying that he trusts Jason Patterson with his life in pass protection. So I'm comfortable with Jason Patterson, and also you do also have the rushing threat of Lucian Anderson, and when Cam Orth finally comes back, you have him. You have his dual threat ability to kind of rely on. So I think Terrion not being healthy isn't necessarily the end-all be-all for this rushing offense. Is it a big blow? Yes, absolutely, because as much as I love watching the rest of these guys play, they don't have the same tackle-breaking ability or the same yards after contact ability that Terrion Stewart has.
So something that stuck out to me about yesterday's game, I'm not sure how tuned in everybody was, but once again, we saw the Falcons struggle with something that they've struggled with routinely in several years, and in particular, literally last week against Old Dominion, is Ben Finley for the Zips was running all over the field.
And that's something that's been an issue for Bowling Green for a couple of years now. I remember last year, Kyle Kelly in the Ball State game ran for 90 yards. It's just been an issue that they can't really seem to keep contained on those quarterbacks who can tuck it and run if they need to, which is disheartening to see because, and that's something that Scott Loeffler knows is a problem with his team, and I don't know necessarily what it comes down to, why that's still an issue, but yeah, it's for the last couple of years that I can remember, especially, it's been a struggle to keep the mobile guys contained. And
we saw that last week against Old Dominion too. That the
Yeah.
third string came in and it was just running all over the field. Like, it seems to me you just put a linebacker with eyes on a guy that you know can run. Like, it's not like you're coming into this game knowing Ben Finley can't run. It's not like you didn't have the third string quarterback. I mean, he was low on the list, but you knew the guy could move a little bit. So it just must be a coaching thing that, like, you kind of got to make that a point, especially on quarterbacks that can run, that you kind of got to put somebody in his face.
And the thing is that it's not that there is a shortage of athletes on the defense, because you've got Joseph Sipp, who's a sideline linebacker. You've got Charles Rosser, who I tweeted out yesterday. He's an animal. I'm thoroughly enjoying watching the Charles Rosser breakout season. And then you have Brock Horn, who's also pretty darn good, especially in the run game. So it's not that there's a shortage of athletes. I think it might just be more of, and not a mindset thing, but maybe more of just a game plan thing, where you have to have someone who's going to keep an eye on the quarterback in case he tucks it and runs.
And it's definitely something interesting to see, too, when you look at the sort of defensive play calling or defensive looks that the Falcons are giving opposing teams. You look at the final play that stopped Akron's last offensive drive yesterday. A lot of pressure in the face of Ben Finley, falls incomplete. That's fine there, but when you're rushing, more than 4 men and it ends up flushing the quarterback out and he can scramble up the middle of the field, it's interesting to see those kinds of decisions being made when it very easily could have turned into an Akron rushing touchdown and suddenly we're looking at an overtime game.
Yeah, and before I talk about that, I will just like to call it back. Harold Fannin is currently 4th in the country in receiving yards, behind Trey Harris, Nick Nash, and Jack Beck for Ole Miss, San Jose State, and TCU respectively. So, but yeah, I think it's been an issue. Like I mentioned, keeping quarterbacks in contain has been an issue. And when you bring more than 4 guys and the pocket collapses and you have that wide open space up the middle of the field, that's when there's an issue. I think it was just not lucky, but it was good for Bowling Green, obviously, that didn't happen in that instance, and they were able to end the game there. But it's just something that they have to work on specifically, and maybe that's something that I'll probably ask Coach at his weekly press conference tomorrow. Is just that how it's a theme over the last 2 years that I can remember, but I would say probably 3 years that even the rushing quarterbacks hurt you.
Even in the short term, like Old Dominion cooked you with it. Now Akron, to a little bit of a lesser extent, but they also ran a pretty sizable amount. And then Ethan Hampton for NIU is not afraid to run as well. He's not like a running quarterback, but he's not afraid to go take some yards when they're given. So definitely stopping that. I mean, NIU's a formidable team as well, better than Akron is. So just going forward, definitely something that you have to look at. You can't let running quarterbacks get a hold of you 3 weeks in a row.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the Texas A&M game, Marcel Reed had 12 carries for 97 yards against Bowling Green. And I guess I'll step it back 1 week to the Penn State game. Drew Aller had 7 carries for I guess he went 36 yards, but the pass rush was able to get to him enough where it brought it down to 7. But he had 36 yards positive. And then in the Old Dominion game, you have Colton Joseph, who averaged 7 yards a carry. So I think it just comes down to the game plan when it comes to quarterbacks who can tuck it and run, and that's something that just has to change, because this isn't the era of quarterback where, like, this isn't 2004 where you have Big Ben Roethlisberger standing in the pocket anymore. These are guys who are athletes, and I think something in the game plan does have to change.
Well, that leads me into something I want to talk about, because it has frustrated me 3 weeks in a row now that Connor Bazelak, who is more or less a pocket passer, gets to stand in the pocket for 10 seconds, and not a single wide receiver, not a single running back goes out, and nobody gets open for him to pass. And he ends up either I don't know whether he's not making decisions that he should, whether he's just nobody's open, but I find it hard to believe that 5 receivers or skill position players can't find open space. Defense is not supposed to be able to cover that long. They never do. And a 10-second long play, I mean, that's just maybe you should look at Connor and say, like, hey, take some yards if they're available, man, because obviously your guys can't get open, your skill position.
Yeah, I don't know if. Well, I guess I shouldn't assume things, but I hope that it's not that Connor's scared to get hit again, because we know he dealt with injuries a lot last year, and I hope that isn't the case, because I think he's a dynamic athlete. He was a dual threat quarterback coming out of high school. He played in I want to say Archbishop Alter ran one of those option style offenses where he can run if he has to, and maybe it's just because he's not 16, 17, 18 anymore like he was in high school, and he's taken a lot more hits from a lot bigger guys across the SEC and the Big Ten and the Mid-American Conference.
Well, and I don't necessarily mind him not taking yards if they're available, like because the ball travels faster out of your hand than it does in your hand. I mean, but it's more just on those skill position players. Like Finn Hogan had a great day yesterday. Malcolm Johnson. How can these guys just not get open? Like the secondary is not that good that they should be able to lock down your wide receivers so easily. Even Harold Fannin. Fannon's like almost indefensible most of the time, but if you extend that play, they disappear.
Well, you look at yesterday, and for the most part, Akron either had a linebacker who was slower than Harold Fannin or a cornerback who Harold Fannin had about 5-6 inches on in coverage. So that's an opportunity there where you can put a jump ball up to him because Harold Fannin has a great catch radius. But also, to your point, it is hard to believe that these guys have 10 seconds to run the scramble drill and get open, and they can't because most of these guys on offense for Bowling Green are either really tall, Finn Hogan's 6'5", Harold is 6'4", or they're track stars.
Yeah, that's true.
Malcolm Johnson Jr. was a track star in high school. Rakeem Smith was a track star in high school. We have guys that are either fast or freakishly tall.
And it's not like Bazelak can't get the ball to him.
Yeah.
He's got a good arm. He does make good decisions generally.
Yeah.
So he's not going to force the ball too much. But you don't want to extend the play by that much, get no yards out of it because your guys can't get open.
But maybe that is the issue is he doesn't want to force it because you look at his turnovers this year. The one last week against Old Dominion forced it in somewhere he probably shouldn't have. The first one against Penn State forced it in somewhere he probably shouldn't have. The Texas A&M game, he just sailed that football. But three of his interceptions, at least you can say, were due to him forcing it somewhere that he shouldn't have.
Just not on plays that were extended as long as some of the ones we saw yesterday.
I think another missing piece of this offense could be R.J. Garcia. He's a guy, big wide receiver you brought in from Kansas State.
Great route runner.
Yeah.
Great route runner.
Injured in the preseason, hasn't played. Leffler at his press conference last week said that he may get snaps against Akron. He was ruled out before the game. Yeah. So you would have to think that timeline for him to return probably opened that window this week against Northern Illinois.
And especially if Terrion stays out for a sizable amount of time, you need as many options as you can possibly. Because at a certain Harold Fannin has already got a bullseye targeted on him all the time.
And that's the thing.
So that's one that they're going to be looking for.
You add R.J. Garcia to it. Right now, who are your two main pass catchers other than Fannin? It's Malcolm Johnson and Finn Hogan.
Yeah.
You add R.J. Garcia to that. Now you got 4 weapons out there. 4 weapons that are going to be solid targets that the defense is going to have to focus on. And that I think that just adds another dynamic element to the offense that they don't exactly have yet.
Yeah.
And I think it was really interesting to watch that game because to what you're saying about not wanting to force the ball into situations that are bad, taking care of it, he largely did do that. He didn't have any turnovers for his first game. Connor Bazelak, that is, didn't have any turnovers for the first time this year, and they do come away with a win. So it's certainly an interesting question as to whether that level of more conservative play from him is A, sustainable, and B, their recipe for winning consistently, or if it's just, maybe Akron's one of the worst teams and you'll get away with it by not taking risks.
I mean, I think it is sustainable because you look at his stat line and, you walk out with a win. Obviously, you'll take that. But you look at his stat line and, I mean, he had a fantastic game. He didn't have any touchdowns, but he still completed 24 of his 30 pass attempts and closed in. He was closer to 300 yards than he was to 200 yards. So I think it's sustainable. It just, you got to get, A, you have to have his mental clock running all the time, and B, you have to, you just have to make sure that he's not having those errant throws where he's trying to force it into situations that he shouldn't.
Well, and that'll come with hopefully R.J. Garcia coming back and distributing the ball better as well. It'll just make it easier on him that he has to make less decisions, and you spread the secondary out a little bit more, and hopefully the defensive spread will be far thinner, and therefore he'll have more windows.
I will say, and I hope I am wrong, but Connor was rehabbing all summer when RJ was healthy. and then RJ gets hurt prior to the season, so we don't know how much chemistry that those two have between themselves, because they haven't really been able to throw the football live, at least in 11-on-11 situations. So you have to wonder if maybe there will be a disconnect for a week or two. But also, I guess to your guys' point is that maybe just the presence of RJ Garcia out there will help wonders.
Yeah, that's something Malcolm Johnson's talked about, is he had that time with Bazelak to build that connection.
Yep.
So it's getting better each week. That is, going to be a big question mark when he does return. Something else that interested me was Loeffler talking about the run game. It's not going where he wants it to be going right now. You look at Patterson had a good game, 52 yards, 2 touchdowns, 18 carries. Rest of BG as a whole averaged 3.3 yards per rush on the ground. Like, that's not where you want it to be. He said we have good running backs, we have good linemen. It's just not going yet. Which, you question if Terrion, hopefully he's not out, but if he is out for a significant number of weeks or a few more weeks, how much trust do you have in that rush game without Terrion?
I wonder how much of that is them running Patterson like they'd run Terrion, because a lot of what, like, Patterson only had 3 yards per attempt, which is not as long as Terrion has had previously, and they're running essentially, like, maybe you have to change up your running style a little bit for Jason than you would for Terrion. They're not the same back necessarily.
I think people forget too, Terrion averages the most yards per carry in Bowling Green history.
Yeah.
Nobody is even close to him in that category.
And while with a great offensive line, you can kind of pound it with Terrion because he can break tackles, maybe you got to change up your attack a little bit. They are two different backs. They're similar in some ways, but they are two different guys, two different skill sets.
And we've seen the teams, because Terrion's a guy that just gets stronger throughout the game. We've seen them struggle closing out games without him. You look at the Minnesota game.
Yep.
That's a big one, I think, of the bowl game. If you have Terrion Stewart, you win that bowl game against Minnesota. So,
well, and it starts with the offensive line too.
Yeah.
You have such a good offensive line. Not running it is almost criminal.
I don't want to say that they're plateauing or getting worse, but you are starting to see a little bit of a drop off.
And I wonder, I do wonder if maybe this slump, I guess you could say, from the offensive line is due to the fact that you don't have your left tackle, and that's you could argue maybe the center, but the left tackle is arguably the most important position on the offensive line, because unless you have a lefty quarterback, that's the side that's blocking. That's the side that's the side that's blocking the side that your quarterback can't see, and also, if you're running to the left, you're running behind backups.
Well, that goes back to when you guys were talking about Bazelak, whether he, should take those few yards. Does he have that in the back of his head that the left tackle is not there? He has to stay in there, get it out quick, and just doesn't trust going outside the pocket right now.
I don't see how that's possible with the way that the pass protection. I mean, he got sacked 4 times, but pass protection generally has been nearly perfect. Like, even broadcasters are commenting like he has an eternity to throw the ball. So I don't know.
But there were only really a couple times in the Akron game where he had more than 2 seconds to throw, because there were multiple times where he had to either step up in the pocket and he stepped up into pressure, or Akron brought a lot of pressure yesterday. Akron brought a lot of pressure. They were rushing 5-6 guys multiple times.
I don't think teams are scared of the run game either without Stewart, and I think that's why they're locking in and just attacking Bazelak. They're not worried that you're going to do a play action or that you're going to thread on the ground. When you bring in Terrion, that changes that, and I think that's why beginning of the year we saw a little bit more out of that from Bazelak.
I really like that point too, because Ben, like you mentioned, Harold Fannin has that target on his back as a pass catcher. And then if you don't have Terrion in, that's a superstar that's out of the game. Yeah. Then you've only really got one focus to really narrow in on. Because as much as we talk about some of the other guys on that squad, the absolute star power that Harold Fannin brings and Terrion Stewart is a step above everybody else on the field. So once you lose half of that duo, it's really easy. Not easy, but it's defensively, it's a lot easier of a decision to focus in on, let's go after the pass. Let's frazzle Bazelak a little bit, force him to throw these weird passes that he might force, see if we can get a pick or two.
Well, and that's what we're really talking about, is filling the hole that Terrion Stewart. I mean, we talked about RJ Garcia too. We're talking about filling a hole here, because Fannin, as we've mentioned before, is the guy. Defense is always going to have an eye on him. Just adding another guy into that and making them make more than one decision is going to be huge.
But also the thing is that Harold Fannin has had a target on his back since the Penn State game, and since then he's only set his career high in receiving yards twice, and he hasn't gone under 100 yards receiving since the Penn State game.
True.
And it's also worth mentioning on that note, being since the Penn State game and then playing A&M, they shouldn't, knock on wood, they shouldn't face a defense that really compares to either of those two the rest of the way.
No, those are the two best defenses that they should play all season. NIU has a great defense. I will go ahead and put that out there. NIU has a fantastic pass defense. So that is something that we will have to look at as we go towards Saturday. NIU, I think, is top 10 in the country in passing yards allowed. They allow some number under 200. I don't have it off the top of my head right now, but they shouldn't play a defense as good as a Big Ten or an SEC defense in the Mid-American Conference. So I think it's really
Northern Illinois right now, 23rd in the country. They're allowing 169.2 passing yards per game.
Okay, so top 10 was wrong, but the 169.2 passing yards per game is...
For comparison, they're one spot above Georgia.
Yeah, so there you go. So it's going to be a tough matchup this week, but also we don't know who's going to be covering number 0, if it's going to be a linebacker or if they will try and put a cornerback on him, which I think is a recipe for disaster. I think both of those are recipes for disaster.
Or a combination.
Yeah, they might just play, they might just play strictly zone on him.
Just looking at stats, if you shut down Fannin, you keep him below 60, you've limited 135 yards of the passing attack. You're dropping your Bazelak down to 190 passing yards in the game, and then we're talking completely different about how good Bazelak was.
Yeah,
not to say that Bazelak was not good, but
yesterday
that's what we're talking about with Terrion being out, because there's nobody to pick up that weight.
Yeah, yesterday Fannin had 135 receiving yards he had 135 of Connor's 268 passing yards. That's if
172 if you want to add in that jet sweep.
Okay.
That's true. Yeah.
So, you take 0 out of the equation, and this is a completely different football team, and you don't have Terry on, and this is a night and day difference.
And I will say, if you're considering that, Harold Fannin's still going to be there. We don't know how they're going to play defense on him, but he's going to be on the field and commanding attention in some capacity or another. Yesterday's outing at least showed better from the supporting cast as far as Jason Patterson had a couple of touchdowns. Finn Hogan had by far his best outing of the year, including a really good 33-yard sideline catch, which on that note, actually, also Connor Bazelak stepped up very nice to throw that ball in a kind of crowded backfield.
It was refreshing to see.
That felt to
3
me
players over
like
50
something we hadn't seen at all.
That was a big talking point among a couple of us between Old Dominion and Akron was we have to see other people step up, because the entire offense can't just be Harold Fannin. And finally, I think this is probably the first time this season, or at least since the Fordham game, but the two receivers, Hogan and Malcolm Johnson, had 12 catches. And this is the first time that receivers have had equal or more receptions than anyone else. I guess to word that better, the last couple weeks, tight ends and running backs have been getting more catches than Bowling Green's receivers. And now Finn and Malcolm combined for half of Connor's completions. So that's refreshing to see, as now the receivers are finally starting to get in the mix.
Right, and you can look at that as simply, okay, maybe this is just the Akron game, maybe we're in for a wake-up call against NIU, but at least in terms of, it's still 11 men and 11 men on the field.
Yeah.
You still have to find those guys, and, seemingly Connor is finding those guys and distributing the ball, at least based on yesterday, far better than we've seen.
I think the biggest positive out of the game, though, is Bowling Green came away with a win.
Yeah,
and that's something that
we're talking a lot of negative here, and I think we should just circle back to the fact that Bowling Green is 1-0 in the Mid-American Conference, and you can say what you want about going 1-3, but that doesn't matter anymore. I mean, it helps winning those games, because it's easier to get to be eligible for a bowl game if you win an extra game or two out of your non-conference slate, because the MAC is a tough conference. The MAC, it's very hard to win.
It was one thing to talk
about
it all last week when that was all we had to go on.
Yeah.
But now it's like
Now we
Like
can
we-
finally look forward and see that this is as Coach Leffler calls it, the out of conference slate, as Coach Leffler calls it, is the preseason. That's how you get tuned up, I guess you could say, and get ready and for conference play. And you played two very physical teams preparing, or I guess you could say three physical teams, because Old Dominion is very big up front and they ran the ball like crazy. But now you're ready for a very physical conference in the Mid-American Conference, and it shows now. You're 1-0. You've got a game that you can absolutely win against NIU. Ethan Hampton is extremely turnover prone. You just have to bait him into those mistakes, and you should have a very good chance. And that's something that this Bowling Green defense has shown, especially last year, that they can force turnovers like nobody's business.
And you're definitely in the territory now where you are in MAC play. You just have to win. It doesn't matter if you win pretty, you win ugly.
Yeah.
That matters a little bit more in the non-conference because you want to show against those big teams. But, I mean, they're not going to get ranked top 25 in the country. So at this point, just win the game.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you blow them out or not. Just win it.
A win is a win is a win, and that's all it's going to come down to. I mean, we saw multiple games last year where the passing game was the offense was weak, but the defense was awesome, and that's why they won. And like you said, all they have to do is just score more points than the other team, and we can walk away happy.
it's a simple game, really.
Yeah,
Just score more points.
Just score more points than the other team, and you're good.
And to that credit, I think something we actually didn't talk about, and I don't know how this one slipped to my mind. You look at the scoreboard of yesterday, and it's 20-27, a solid output from the offense. But the defense themselves only allowed 13 of those points, the other 7 coming from that fiasco on special teams. But, I mean, that's enough of a limiting performance from the defense to win games, get to Detroit.
If your defense can give you 13 points a game, then, or if your defense can hold the other team to 13 points a game, then you should go undefeated.
I
in
like
this
the way the
conference.
defense played score outcome. I wish offense could have got one more.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's just how it goes. Can't remember back all the way, but one call goes one way, and it's a 2-score game instead of a 1. And so it was good all around. It was refreshing to see for sure.
At the end of the day, a victory is a victory.
You're 1-0 in the MAC.
Yep. At the end of the day, you're 1-0 in the Mid-American Conference. You're undefeated in the regular season, and now it's NIU week.
And that's something interesting to look ahead to, because notably both of Bowling Green's pod mates, NIU and Toledo, are also undefeated in the MAC at 1-0. You look at next week's matchup. I want all of you to give me your answer. Who do you think, not named Harold Fannin Jr. or Connor Bazelak, is the most important player to swing the game next week in the favor of the Falcons?
I got one first. Nick Reimer. If you get your starting left tackle back healthy, that's going to be big for that game. We talked about the pass defense of NIU to give Connor that just extra confidence there with his starting left tackle for his blind side. I think that's going to be very big. It's in for the run too. Help out the right side of the offensive line a little bit. Give them a little more confidence, not have them think too much. I think that would be a very big piece for Bowling Green.
I'd say more of a skill position player. I'd say Malcolm Johnson. He's been more consistent than Finn Hogan, even though Finn had more yards yesterday. I think getting a second option, make the secondary have to worry about more than one guy is going to be huge. The running game is obviously it's going to be crucial, but I think getting Malcolm Johnson a good amount of touches and a good amount of yards, maybe even a touchdown, will be big.
I'm not going to narrow it down to one specific player. I'm just going to say a skill group, or not a skill group, a position group is going to be what what's going to have to swing it for Bowling Green, and that's going to be the defensive line. You have one of the best running backs, not just in the conference, but in the country, walking into Dwight Perry Stadium on Saturday in Ontario Brown. And for whatever reason, every time I try and look at the statistics for the MAC website, it always locks up on me. But Ontario Brown, he was hurt. He was dinged up a little bit last week, but he's a great runner. He's patient. He's fast. He's powerful. And also, I guess if you want me to say one person who has to step up, I'm going to say Jordan Oladokin, because you've got Trayvon Rudolph, who's a big play threat waiting to happen. You're going to need somebody who's going to be able to provide that blanket coverage and shut down that passing game. And
that's a good call.
And just to point it out, Ontario Brown, third in the conference in rushing, 87 attempts, 401 yards. He's got 2 touchdowns this season, but he also on the ground this season, but he also a threat in the passing game as well. So I want to see the defensive line step up big time, because you have to be able to stop the run, and you also have to get pressure in the face of Ethan Hampton and force turnovers. But also Jordan Oladokin has to really strap in and make sure that Trayvon Rudolph doesn't get free.
Should note too, those 87 attempts are the most in the MAC. So the Huskies aren't afraid to just run it up on the ground. So the defensive line, they're going to be big.
I'm a little frustrated there, Reese. Oladokin was my pick, because I think
you can also choose Oladokin.
Well, no, because now I look like a copycat, and I don't like that.
Now, just to your defense, Chaz, I was going to go with Oladokin. So
I think Oladokin.
Great minds think alike, I think.
It's good that we're on the same page.
Yeah.
I'm going to switch to Patterson. I think you got to get the run game going if you're Bowling Green, and if Terrion isn't in for another week, it's Patterson time. You got to have that secondary star. If he can step up, that's great. But for me, it's either Oladokin or Patterson, and let's keep it short and sweet.
I don't want to bank too hard on relying on Harold Finn to do everything, but it seems like that could be the situation that they get into, and for that reason, my focus falls more on the defense, kind of in the wheelhouse of what Reese is saying. And when you're going against a team that has kind of a bell cow back that they're going to be seeing on first and second, and even on third if it's a passing down or rushing down, I think it's really important to not let those shots they may take downfield to their number one guy get past you. And so I also think Jordan Oladokin needs to play at his best. And on top of that, with the turnover proneness, as you said, there hopefully would be opportunities, and you'd like to see your kind of number one guy capitalize on those. So that's my pick as well.
And also, I'll let you talk here in a second. Didn't mean to cut you off, but
no, you're okay.
NIU, the number one rushing offense in the conference, 230 yards a game. Second place is Ohio with 191. So, like Tyler said, they are not afraid to punch the ball down your throat. And they have 10 touchdowns. They average 5 yards. They average 5.1 yards a carry, which is second in the conference behind Central Michigan, who averages 5.4, and over 1,100 yards on the ground for Northern Illinois' offense as a whole. So, the defensive line absolutely has to be ready for a physical game down in the trenches, because NIU is going to pound the football.
Not to change the subject, I don't know how much time we have left on this topic. I personally am really missing Teron Keith right now, looking at this team. How crucial would it be to have a guy that can run and catch, have a dual threat that's propelling the running game, also directing some targets away from Harold Fannin, maybe some of the defense away from him as well. I mean, what a huge player he would be to have right now.
Here's
not even stats wise, just as the kind of player that he is.
Here's the frustrating thing to me is that I think Justin Peggy's is that kind of guy. That vibe from he's a very dynamic playmaker. We saw it on the kickoff, and he's had a couple receptions this season. I don't feel like they use him much, and maybe that's just because
I think that backfield's just so loaded.
So it's a very full backfield.
You got Terrion, Peggy's, Jamal Johnson.
Every skill player has their wheelhouse, but they don't really do much. Like, I guess Fannin had the rushing touchdown yesterday, so that you could interpret it as
Here's
that.
Your dual threat.
Like, Terrion Stewart has his wheelhouse. Harold Fannin definitely has the strengths. Malcolm Johnson does. Finn Hogan does as well. Jason Patterson does. Teron Keith really didn't have a wheelhouse. He was like a kind of everything kind of guy.
But also,
he reminded me of like a Duke Johnson kind of player.
Yeah.
Tyler, now that you say that, where was Jamal Johnson yesterday? He only had he had 3 carries for 11 yards, and that's a guy that they've used as a receiver primarily. That's a guy that they've used in that Teron Keith role. So I want to know maybe what changed, because the game was a situation where, you could run the football just to kill clock, but that was a game where you had to throw the football to win.
Well, I saw Leffler talking post-game about giving Jason Patterson opportunities because of what he's done in the block game, and I think that was the difference. The first time we've really seen this year, like Patterson be that feature back. So that is a big question, though, because if Patterson's going to be featured a lot in the run game going forward, where does Jamal? You know, I don't know if I know the exact answer for where they use Jamal, but then you still have Peggy's, too. It's like they have so many good backs. You just got to find a way to utilize
They're
them.
suffering from success right now, and I'm visualizing the DJ Khaled picture in my head right now. They're suffering from success, and the fact that they have,
which is so crazy to say that they're 2-3.
Yeah.
That they're suffering from success, but they are.
But I mean, in the backfield, you have when Terrion Stewart is healthy, he's one of the best running backs in the conference. You have Jason Patterson, who's a very, very capable backup, and he showed that yesterday. You have Jamal Johnson, who is great as a pass catcher. You have Justin Peggies, who has X Factor ability. And then on top of that, when you and I were in Canton over the summer for the MAC football kickoff, Scott Loeffler he was singing the praises of this freshman class in the backfield. I mean, you've got Nakia Moncrief, you've got Markel Porter, you've got Cameron Petaway, you've got a bunch of great guys in that backfield, and it's just going to come down to how do you utilize them correctly? Because as much as I don't want to dog on Jason Patterson, but I don't think he's a receiving back. I think he's a guy that they've thrown to a couple times throughout the season, but I don't think he's a guy whose forte is coming out of the backfield and catching passes. That's why you bring in a Jamal Johnson or a Justin Peggy.
That was my point about the Teron Keith.
Exactly.
You're not expecting Terrion to really bear the weight of catching passes.
I think honestly, we might see until Terrion's 100%. We might see Loeffler just ride the hot hand. You might just go with the running back that is having success on each drive and just keep featuring them.
And that's probably better, too, because how many times have we seen Terrion Stewart get banged up in one way or another because of his usage being so high, sit out for a week, sit out for 2 weeks, come back, and then re-aggravate that same sort of thing? I mean...
Yeah, Terrion's a great back, but we do have to also remember, 2 years ago, didn't play the full season.
Last year, he missed 4 or 5 games with an injury.
At the end of the season.
Yeah, at the end of the season when they could have used him the most.
This season, he's been banged up from the start, basically. So... great back, but availability is the best ability. If he's not on the field, he's not contributing anything to the team, and it's just a question mark of what you do without him.
Well, it seems everything in his power to come back has happened every time too. So it really does come down to the coaching decision. Hey, we need to let our guy take the time he needs to be his best version possible and available.
And you also hope he's not in trying to come back, banging something else up. If he's trying to come back from a knee, banging up an ankle, come back from
rehabbing
an ankle,
too
banging
hard.
up a knee. Yeah,
rehabbing too hard.
You just gotta hope at this point you give him the amount of time he needs to come back and make sure he's fully healthy for the rest of the season because they're going to need him.
That's why you gotta hope the run game steps up, because if he's watching his team struggle with the run, it's gonna force him to have to come back. I mean, with how much work all those athletes put into this team, they want to win, whether they're on or off the field. So that's a very good point. You got to hope that something gets figured out here soon if they just find somebody that can step up, fill the role good enough, and allow a fully 100% Terrion Stewart instead of an 85 to 90% Terrion.
And you're going to need Terrion back because just looking outside, this is a day in October. You couldn't throw the football it's pretty windy outside. For those of you who can't see, it's windy outside, and we've all lived in this city for at least 365 days. So we know that once the calendar hits November, the wind kicks into an entirely different gear.
You can't. It's almost like you can't do anything but run the ball. You can't kick.
Yeah.
You can't trust kicks. You can't trust punts.
Yeah, and the worst part is it's crosswind. It's not even just the direction the wind blows.
The entire city is a wind tunnel because it's just flat land.
And
so
we saw a sneak peek of it in the Old Dominion game when the last little bit of Hurricane Helene came through. Deutsch Perry Stadium was a wind tunnel, and we saw Jackson Cleather miss a 50-yarder short because he was kicking into that crosswind. And we saw a couple of Connor Bazelak's passes trail off a little bit because he was throwing into the wind. So you either need Terrion back 100% healthy, or the rest of these guys have to step up in the sense that 50 rushing yards, or as a team they ran for 118 yards. That's not going to cut it in the MAC in November. That's not going to cut it.
Yeah. So Bowling Green will be back in action this upcoming Saturday. They'll kick off at 3:30 against those 1-0 in the MAC Huskies from Northern Illinois. Falcon Media Sports Network's Sean Connolly and Andrew Halkowski are going to be on the call on that at Falcon Radio in advance of that 3:30 kickoff. We're going to take a short break here now that we've kind of wrapped up our football conversation, but I am going to put out a question for our members here in the studio to ruminate over during the break. So, as with many colleges, Bowling Green is on our fall break for this Monday and Tuesday. Obviously, everybody in this studio is still here in beautiful Bowling Green, Ohio.
What's fall break? I don't know what that is.
Exactly.
No sleep till Brooklyn, baby.
So what are you the most looking forward to doing with these days off of classes for the next 2 days this long weekend? Think about it. We'll come back. We've got a lot more to go, so don't tune out. You're listening to the Zig Zone on WBGU 88.1 FM.
Hey, BGSU graduate Jason Jackson from the Miami Heat here. When I was a Falcon, there was BGRSO. Now it's Falcon Media Sports Network. Keep up with all BGSU sports news and action by following BG_FMSN on Twitter/X and check out BGFalconMedia.com. Hi, Ziggy.
Mark Zaborny here, host of WBGU-FM's Jazz Unlimited. Listen to Jazz weekdays from 9 a.m. until noon with special live in-studio editions every Wednesday. I'll spin classic jazz standards and the latest jazz releases. That's Jazz Unlimited, weekdays from 9 until noon on Northwest Ohio's community radio station, WBGU 88.1 FM.
On October 4th, 2024, BGSU volleyball opposite hitter Lauren Hovey recorded her 115th career service ace in BG's comeback reverse sweep of Western Michigan, passing Paige Penrod for the most in program history during the rally scoring era. Falcon Media Sports Network's Chaz McNeil had the call of the historic moment on WBGU 88.1 FM.
And that will make history. Lauren Hovey's 115th ace in the rally scoring era is in the history books as the Stroh Center applauds.
This has been a Falcon Media Sports Network featured call.
Welcome back to the Zig Zone, bringing you back in with the theme from Tim Burton's Batman from the Falcon Marching Band. I'm once again joined in the studio here by Ben Korak, Reese Patrikis, Chaz McNeil, Tyler Kavalitz. I'm Holden Ruck. And before we went to break, I asked you, with these extra days off of classes that we've got, what are you most looking forward to doing with that potential extra time, barring extra work and whatever you may have on your time? So
I will be sitting in this building working on sports material. That is what I'm going to be spending most of the time on. I'm here, so
you need to find a new hobby, man.
I do probably.
I've seen you. I mean, I have seen you here for 12 plus hours. You need a hobby. Like, have you tried like crocheting or something? Like, I feel like that would be good for you. Like,
that takes too much time.
Lord knows you can't. Lord knows you can't watch the Browns once a week.
That takes years.
Low hanging fruit.
Yeah. No, but I'll be working on men's basketball feature series. I'm working on it's Rising Stars, new faces for BGSU men's basketball. So
Tyler, where can I find those videos when they get released?
You can find those every Monday and Friday at noon. They're posted to the BG Falcon Media YouTube channel. We also put them out to socials. So. At BG_FMSN on Twitter X and BG Falcon Media on Facebook and Instagram. New one dropping tomorrow at noon.
Who is it?
Excellent.
Who is it? Who's it on?
Tomorrow will be Jackson Pardon.
Okay.
So second generation Bowling Green men's basketball player. So it's a good one. Check it out at noon.
We will be there.
I'm gonna use my answer to plug a little bit more because we have a broadcast filled weekend coming up. The next 2 days for me are just going to be filled with prep work because we have Robert Morris in hockey on Thursday, I believe. Yes, we have volleyball and hockey at Thursday at home. Volleyball at home on Friday against Central Michigan. Volleyball's got Eastern and then Central. And then nothing on Saturday besides the football game. And then Sunday we have hockey against Simon Fraser. Both hockey games are exhibition, but it's home opener, brand new look to the Slater Family Ice Arena. So definitely stay tuned for that. All those games, WBGU 88.1 FM, same station you're listening to. Yeah, it should be fun. Hockey season is back. Also going to play a lot of NHL on Xbox because hockey season's back, baby.
Underrated game, by the way.
I do. I'm not someone who enjoys watching hockey, but I enjoy playing Chell. I think it's a good game.
I was always an MLB The Show guy. I was never really a Madden guy. College football is very fun.
Mm-hmm.
I think NHL is my favorite sports video game.
It's up there.
Well,
And I would almost dare say it's the best.
The show is completely. The MLB The Show has completely fallen off over the last couple of years.
I think college football tops
it hasn't changed enough.
It really hasn't. It's just
same with Madden. Madden's the same every year.
It's a bad product.
Yeah. What are we talking about now? We were talking about fall break.
Welcome to the Zig Zone.
Now we're talking about video games.
So after that digression, over the next 2 days, I'm gonna probably sleep in on Monday.
Gonna be crying about the Browns.
All right, dude, it's my turn to talk. I have the talking stick.
Jameis Winston.
I have the talking
Hold
stick.
it, I could talk.
I am gonna probably sleep in till 7:30 tomorrow. And then I am probably gonna do nothing.
AM or PM?
or
AM.
7:30
I
p.m.
had to clarify that.
Okay.
That's an extra 2 hours for me, baby. That's
Wake up for dinner.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, I'll take an extra 2 hours on Monday, and then I'm probably just gonna enjoy my time. I have an empty apartment. My roommate is out with friends in A-Town, as they call it. He's down in Athens.
Are you not friends? Your roommate left without you?
Well, I mean he didn't offer me a
That is
spot.
a
B, I
crazy
didn't want
question.
to
We're
go.
getting a little deep here.
I mean, that's kind of a crazy thing to ask me. I would.
Do you have any friends, Reese?
I
Do you
would-
have any friends?
I would.
Just so you guys aren't in the studio, Chaz asked that with the straightest face ever.
Yeah.
I hear you thought food questions would be the
So
worst thing
yeah,
to
here
do on
here
this.
we go. Now I'm being now I'm being attacked for not.
This is just going to turn into
yeah.
a weekly.
Well, if it's
bad
somebody you-
Yeah,
take
this is
summary
Somebody you're supposed to
segment.
live with.
This
Mark
is
your
brutal.
calendars every
Last-
other week.
I mean,
Two
I didn't
weeks.
really
weeks
want to
ago.
go in the first place. I mean, that's a 3-hour drive. That's not really something I'm trying to.
So you were invited.
No,
Okay. Okay.
no, I wasn't
All right,
invited.
all
But
right.
if I was invited, I would.
2 weeks ago was pizza. Now
no.
it's Reese has
That
no
was 4
friends.
weeks ago. That was
Now
4 weeks
Reese
ago.
has no friends.
Two weeks ago, I had a good week. 2 weeks ago, I
Two weeks
had.
ago was the food he had one time. That
Yes,
was, that was
two-
2
Oh,
weeks
what was
ago.
your answer for that? I was
2 weeks ago, they asked what my favorite restaurant was here in
What is
town,
it?
and I said Lupita.
He's
not
right.
bad.
He is right.
I don't disagree.
If you're like Ben and you miss an episode of the Zig Zone, you can always find the rebroadcast
Oh,
on
look at this
BG
guy
Falcon
plugging.
Media YouTube.
Well, I want to.
And then you can hear Tyler Cavlett say that his favorite restaurant in Bowling Green is Penn Station.
that is not true. You can
Oh.
listen back to the rebroadcast on the BG Falcon Media
I
YouTube.
want to
Hear that
continue
is
the
taken on
plug-a-thon
context.
a little bit.
Chad, what's your answer?
Because I have to plug something a little bit too, because with the next 2 days for fall break, I'm also going to be sitting and just doing work, probably a little bit of it with Ben, getting ready for that volleyball matchup. But we have a new show coming out on BG Falcon Media as well.
We do.
The Swoop, which is a
What is the swoop?
I'll tell you, Tyler. So it is a Bowling Green sports show filmed like a professional newscast. We've got a new 15 to 20 minute segment, actually fully 20 minutes, coming out every single Thursday. That will film at around 4. Get out on your televisions, your YouTubes at about 6 p.m. So that's really exciting. Going to be on that every week and probably prepping for a couple athlete of the weeks we got going on. Holden, I believe you will be on this week.
I will, in fact, be on this week. I believe we also have Mr. Lathan Chapman, as always, and Caden Knapp joining us.
Yes,
where
we
can
will.
everyone find this?
I'd be happy to tell you that. So that's on the BG24 YouTube channel. I believe on Twitter X it will be reposted, rebroadcast, uploaded by Falcon Media, or is it Falcon Media Sports Network? I always mess up the plug. It's BG_FMSN.
Sounds to me like you don't know what you're talking about.
You know,
I will say though, for those of you who don't get a chance to keep up to date with all the news around Bowling Green athletics, that is a great way to find it. It's only 15, 20 minutes each week, but it's going to have basically everything noteworthy that happened this past week in BGSU athletics packed into it. So
especially if you got it from the newscast last year where we cover everything in the swoop.
Yeah.
So for sure.
And it's really fun because it's just full discussion based. I don't want to go too full plug here, but just the ability to get, it's like the Zig Zone a little bit more on steroids, a little bit more in front of the camera. You get to talk.
You have to look at Chaz every week.
Yeah, I mean, and
Get
who
to look
wouldn't
at
like
Chaz.
that?
Yeah, you get to look at Chaz. I'm sorry.
You get the privilege. Yeah,
You get the
that's
privilege.
right. Oh, it looks like Reese Patricus in the studio has a little question.
No, you asked who wouldn't want to do that, and I raised my hand.
All right, I think that wraps up the segment of what we're doing over fall break pretty well. Then.
I was going to say, I would love to have a different answer, but it's occurred to me that I picked a very, very poor question for what we had for this week. I myself am also going to be prepping to call the soccer game for the men on Tuesday night, and then inevitably for the swoop as well.
What time
So
on Tuesday night?
that is an excellent question. The soccer team is playing Tuesday night. Well, actually, before we talk about when the soccer team is playing next, let's talk about the soccer team themselves.
that's a
Let's talk
great-
about both
that's a
of them.
great idea.
Get back into some actual sports content, shall we? So, Tyler, take us through it a little bit. Let's talk about the men first. What's going on in men's soccer?
Yeah, so men's soccer, they just had their 6-match unbeaten streak come to an end. So they were on a very, very hot streak. They lost to UIC yesterday, but coming into that, they were riding wins against Butler in Northern Illinois, a draw against Northern Kentucky, wins against Bradley in Eastern Illinois, and a win against Belmont. They lost to UIC in Chicago 2-1. But this is a men's team that is really, I don't want to say overseeding expectations. I think they're a little slept on coming into this year. But they are playing very well right now. Currently leading the Missouri Valley Conference. 9 points. Missouri State and Drake both tied in second with 7. They're now 3-1 in conference play, 8-2-1 overall, and they have some guys playing the best they've played in their career. Trace Terry has 10 goals this season. I believe I heard somewhere that is tied for the most in the country. But it is the first Falcon to have double-digit goals since 2014 when Pat Flynn had 14.
And that's really something that's good to see when you look at that team. I'm not saying this is the case every time, but oftentimes you'll see a game from them where Trace Terry doesn't even look like the best scorer on the team. You've also got Bennett Painter, who's been off to just an outstanding start to this season. And, well, I shouldn't say start as they've progressed quite far now at this point. But
yeah, I mean, you're already looking at, you're getting through conference play pretty far here. But yeah, Painter's been pretty amazing too. He's a guy that is creeping up towards a possible double-digit goal season. I think he's at 6 or 7 now. So if this, and then you have Brennan Graves, he's even though they lost yesterday, he is solid in the goal. So this is a Bowling Green team that has a very good chance to make a run at it for the Missouri Valley Conference. I know coming into the season, Western Michigan, Missouri State, Drake, all these teams, but Bowling Green's right there up in the thick of it at the top of the conference.
Well,
Right.
and you have to mention like how tough their schedule is coming up because they have Bradley, they have Belmont, who's pretty good. University of Illinois Chicago, as Lucas Kleinmeyer said, is a sneaky, very good team. Drake, Missouri State, Evansville, Western. I mean, that's a rough I mean, they've been playing fantastic, but that is a rough stretch to head into if you're men's soccer.
Good thing for them though is they're getting back to Cochran. We'll get into the schedule, the next 2. And you have at least...
You do also have Drake and Western at home as well,
Yeah,
which helps.
yeah.
Cochran's a good place
And
to
you
play.
have Detroit Mercy up next, which is a game that...
Yeah, that's...
If you have anything, if you're, if men's soccer has anything that they haven't really figured out or any kinks in their system that they really need to get going, that's the game to fix it. Against Detroit Mercy, in front of the home crowd, figure it out as you move into the really tough, like you said, back end of that conference schedule.
Well, and it is worth noting, too, you look at them dropping a conference game, and that's never what you want to see, but they are still in the Missouri Valley Conference standings right now, sitting atop of it at 3-1, Missouri State and Drake 2-0-1 themselves, UIC 2-1 after beating the Falcons. Western Michigan, though, lower down at 1-0 and 3 draws. A bit of a surprise to look at after their really hot start to the year.
Yeah, that's one that I think they're a lot better than that record. You look at it, though, it's not a loss-heavy record.
No.
They don't have a loss in conference play yet. It's just the 3 draws. So they're a team that if they can stack up some wins, they'll be shooting back towards the top pretty quick. But you have draws against Belmont. You have draws against Missouri State and Drake. So
you did lose to Illinois Chicago.
They did. They did. So
so the most recent game you've lost, but other than the most recent, you haven't lost yet.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
if you're
and some pretty good wins there too. 5-0 against Eastern, who wasn't the greatest, but I mean some pretty even close scores, pretty solid wins as I remember them. So.
Yeah, but I think looking at Western Michigan too, they're only 3 points behind Bowling Green. So if Western Michigan's kind of the drop off, you go down to Evansville, that's where the big drop off happens. But at this point, Western Michigan, UIC, Drake, Missouri State, Bowling Green, they're all contenders for that conference.
Yeah, certainly. And it's also really interesting to me to look at because Western Michigan, just based on their win-loss, is sitting down in that 5th ranking of the standings, even though they are the only lossless team, not only in conference play, but overall. Missouri State and Drake, as we said, haven't dropped a conference game, but
Western Michigan
is 6-0-5.
Yeah, Western Michigan.
Kind of a high propensity for drawing.
Not only are they the only team without a loss overall this season, the next closest is Bowling Green and Missouri State. They each have 2.
So they did leave a lot of points on the table just because of those 3 ties. Like that, it's the same thing that we saw at hockey last year in Bowling Green. You tie a lot, you're getting points. Like you're not coming in with nothing, but you're leaving a lot of points on the table.
The thing is, though, Western Michigan, I still think, is one of those top 2, top 3 teams for sure in the conference. And they're a team you really can't go into it looking at the record. I think that would be a mistake going in facing against them, looking at the conference record.
And Bowling Green also has they have an extra game played.
Yeah.
So and their point total, it's
a little inflated.
They are essentially tied with Missouri State and Drake because points wise, because they played an extra game, they have an extra win.
It's a little inflated, but I think it's gonna be very interesting towards the end of the season because a lot of these teams, they won't face each other till the last few weeks of the season. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, certainly. Looking over at the women's side of soccer, talk about their most recent action, Tyler.
Yeah, I think women's was a little different. I think they came into their past game complete opposite what the Falcons are riding. The men's team was riding. Men's team had 6 straight unbeaten. Women's team was coming off 2 wins to open up conference play against Ball State and Toledo. Then they got just mauled by Ohio in a really bad loss at Cochran 3-0. They drew Miami of Ohio on the road. They returned to Cochran, though, yesterday, beat Northern Illinois 2-1. So they got back on track with that win. That's a win that they should have gotten. That's a win they did get. So it was very good to see out of them. And a real interesting note on that win, you did not have Madison Vukas in goal. Vukas has not played the past 2 games. She got I think nickel, or I think Chris Fox described it as a hand or a finger injury. It was while she was attempting to save the second Ohio goal of that matchup against the Bobcats. So for now, she's out of action. Peyton O'Malley, the freshman, her first game at Cochran Stadium, did very well against Northern Illinois. 7 saves, was really a key star.
Only
in
one
that
goal allowed. I'd say that's a pretty solid performance by the rookie.
That's a good sign that they are able to hold something up without Madison Vukas in goal. But I think the other thing for this women's team is just getting that confidence back. I think that Ohio loss took a lot of confidence in the short term, at least, out of that team. And to see them get back on the right track is very important for this team. And I think something else, people were kind of starting to question stuff after the Ohio loss. They're only 4th in the MAC right now. They are staying towards those top of the standings. They haven't really fallen down too far.
This is what I was about to say. Is we've been talking. I think they're in the shadow of men's soccer right now because they
definitely are.
I mean, if they get one more win, they're sitting 4-1-1 atop of the conference. Like, there's no reason to say that they're any worse than men's soccer.
I think the difference is
because, again, like we said, non-conference is essentially preseason.
I think the difference is men's soccer is running a system, Nichols' system, that they have ran for years and years and years. They have a lot of pieces that have returned and are going. And you look at women's soccer, it's a whole new system under Chris Fox. It's taking them time to really get to know it and to excel in it. And I think you're starting to see signs of that. So I think it's just growing pains that people just forgot happen.
Yeah, I was one of the people that definitely had reservations about the style, but they're working. They're 3-1-1.
If they have the pieces to make it work, it's just taking a little bit of time for it to work. But I think it's really starting to come together. I think they're just playing better than they were beginning of the season too. And we'll see if they. I think the big thing is carrying momentum for that team. I don't think they've done a tremendous job of that this season. I think if they can carry over momentum though and start building a couple game win or unbeaten streak, they're going to be in a good spot. This
is going to be turning point's not the right word because they have a winning record. This is going to be like one of the biggest games of your season.
It is.
If not one of the next one. The two next are the biggest stand of your season.
What Ben's referencing is Western Michigan
number 1 3-0-2, Buffalo number 2 3-1-1. Those are the top two teams at the conference.
That's
granted it is close because Bowling Green has the same record as Buffalo, but I mean these are the two best teams. If you come away with even one win out of the two, you are in such good shape.
And that's not to mention, even if you go off of record, you look at the game after that, they're traveling to Central Michigan, who's only one spot behind them in the standings.
And Eastern, who's not that far away either.
That's why the Northern Illinois win was so big for this team, because you did not want to go into that stretch.
No, you can't go on a loss. No.
So that's going to be, I mean, if you want to know where that team's sitting, that's going to be your test. And I think it'll be interesting to see who's in goal for them, whether it is O'Malley or whether it is Vukas. I think even though O'Malley's played good, I think you really want to have Vukas back.
Yeah, for sure.
So hopefully she is able to
and you
come
get the
back
benefit of Cochran Stadium in 2 weeks when you come back to Buffalo, or I guess Sunday.
Yeah, the Western Michigan test on the road is going to be a very big one.
I hedged it by saying Western's the game. If you could take Western and head back home, 2-game win streak, back into Cochran Stadium, hopefully Vukas is back, you'll be in such amazingly good shape. There's no reason to put them right up with men's soccer again.
And you look at their schedule, it is the only games they have left in conference play versus opponents with a losing record in conference play are Eastern Michigan and Akron. Everyone else is either 500 or above 500 in conference play. So I think both the soccer teams just really have tough back-end schedules in conference play.
Yeah, and that's certainly something we've talked about previously too. You know, neither the Missouri Valley Conference nor the Mid-American Conferences are slouches as far as, you know, the rest of the country goes, and so it'll be really important and interesting to see what they can do.
And you know they've had that Western Michigan game circled for a while now, of that is one of the better teams in the conference. So we'll see how ready they are for it.
Yeah. So the women's team, as we said, will be back in action when they travel to Kalamazoo on October 10th, this Thursday, to play the Western Michigan Broncos. And then they'll make their home return next Sunday at 1 p.m., right before this, next week, against Buffalo. So those will be some big tests for them. The kickoff for that home appearance is 1 p.m. As far as the men's team goes, they will be back in action this Tuesday at 7 p.m. for a home game at Cochran Stadium against Detroit Mercy. Falcon Media Sports Network's Artie Abrego and myself will be on the call, probably starting around 6:45 p.m. So that will conclude our soccer discussion for today, and we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to move on to volleyball, who's had an absolutely tremendous weekend. So don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. You're listening to the Zig Zone on WBGU 88.1 FM.
Hi, my name is Kate Eigner. I'm number 17 on the women's volleyball team, and my Falcon 4 bucket list places are probably anywhere in British Columbia, Canada, Vail, Colorado in the wintertime, Portofino, and Stockholm, Sweden.
Hey, I'm Tyler Kavlitz, and you are listening to 88.1 FM WBGU Bowling Green, home of the Falcon Media Sports Network.
BG Falcon Media is an organization encompassing student media organizations at Bowling Green State University. BG24 is the video component of Falcon Media that creates a weekly live newscast every Tuesday. All videos and live streams can be found on the BG Falcon Media YouTube channel and website, or BG24's Twitter account. BG Falcon Media, empowering students with creative freedom by exploring technologies and focusing on audience engagement and service to our communities.
Welcome back once again to the Zig Zone, bringing you in with BGSU's fanfare that leads into the Forward Falcons. Once again, I'm joined here by Tyler Kavelitz, Chaz McNeil, Reese Patricus, and Ben Korak. I'm Holden Ruck. And before we get into our volleyball action, I'm just going to recap for you a little bit of the cross-country action from this weekend. The men's and women's teams both traveled to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania for Lehigh University's Paul Short run this weekend. And there was a large amount of success for both teams. Junior Kylie Cubison, who was the top finisher for the women's team at the MAC Championships last year, was 24th in the race of over 400 participants, setting her own personal record. And freshman Lexi Panning made her collegiate debut, placing 50th overall in the field of 400. The team finished 16th out of 42 teams. On the men's side, there was certainly less success from a team and individual standpoint, but notable debuts for the season included Anthony Sweet, the top finisher and an honorable mention MAC runner from last year, as well as Luke Lesueur, a freshman, making his Bowling Green collegiate debut. That concludes our cross-country recap, and so now we're going to pivot to volleyball. So Chaz, take us away.
Women's volleyball they're still on such a crazy run, 5-0 in the MAC, and it doesn't look like anything's going to slow down. They, on Friday, had their second straight reverse sweep of the entire week, I guess you want to call it, but of the season. Second straight reverse sweep. That does not happen in volleyball. They fell 2 sets early to Toledo on Tuesday, then managed to storm all the way back. Then they faced Western Michigan on Friday, a team that bounced them from the MAC Tournament Championship in 2023. That was a game that everybody had circled on their calendar when volleyball's schedule got released in the middle of summer. And that game on Friday lived up to everybody's expectations. Western Michigan goes out to this really big lead. It looks like they're going to complete the sweep, and then Bowling Green just turned it on. They shut down Western throughout that entire match. At that point, they got things going. They ended up getting a lot more consistency, a lot better touches, and then on Saturday, they just ran through Western, did not allow them to really get going anywhere. They shut down their number one scorer, Logan Case, as their setter, got absolutely shut down as well, even though she was doing really well. Bowling Green just looks so good this past weekend.
They really do, and I think you look at their track record, 3 sets in the most recent against Western Michigan, the reverse sweep in 5 before that, the reverse sweep in 5 against Toledo, and then a 3-set sweep of Ball State before that, and another 5-set match. The team is really built for like kind of any length of match, it seems.
I think that's the really big point when you go through the season now is Bowling Green's perfect in the MAC. They're currently slated to host the MAC tournament if they were to keep this consistency going. There's a lot more volleyball left to play, but let's say they do host that tournament. They get the home court advantage. They've been there before. They've been down 2-0. They have the ability to win. And the fact that you did that against Western, too, a team that had won the MAC Tournament Championship, a team that had also been there before, a lot of Western starters had returned from last season as well. This is so refreshing to see, especially after a really tough non-conference that the Falcons had faced through 3 tournament weeks and then that Ohio State week. It's really nice to see them prove themselves in MAC play. They go and they sweep Ball State. They had a 5-setter against Ball State. They can win these long games, and a lot of these matches aren't going to be sprints. They want to sprint against Western, but besides that, it's just really refreshing. And I want to talk about Toledo, because that Toledo game is going to be one that's swept under the rug. It happened after the weekend slate against Ball State, and when you're talking media, like the Zig Zone, that's going to get brushed over, but we can't brush it over because that game was very exciting, especially for you have players like Mia Tyler who stepped up. the Falcons had needed a secondary offensive weapon for a minute. Lauren Hovey, we know she's going to be very good. She's going to be very consistent. But the fact that they got good touches out of Mia Tyler, that offense got going, and the fact that you do it in a reverse sweep and then you go and do it again against Western is just, I can't say it enough. It's very cool.
And it feels like I'm repeating myself, constantly saying this, but Lauren Hovey, I don't know what more you could say about her. A piece of history on Friday night.
She got history actually on both days. On Friday,
right.
She had her 115th service ace in her career, which is the most in the rally scoring era that started in 2001. She passed Paige Penrod as the most. That was an unreal moment. Got the opportunity to call that game, and it was just so cool because everybody knew what had happened on that ace. So she had the opportunity to break it against Toledo, and every time she went to serve, you could hear people kind of holding their breath, getting excited to see her make that big piece of history, and she didn't end up doing it. It's really nice that she got to do it at home in front of a home crowd that understood the moment a little bit more than Toledo would. So that was really exciting. And then on Saturday, she got her 1,000th career kill, which is just, it's so nice to have her on the team as a junior. It's so good. You lose last year. They had a couple big losses, and the fact that offensively Lauren Hovey just stays so consistent, she is just so good. 1,000th career kill. She, even on Friday, she had a couple hiccups. She ended up getting pulled for the first time in her career against Western for a little bit. They put her back in. Faith got restored, and now she looks even better than ever. She's second in the MAC in service aces. She's got 32. On Saturday against Western, I believe she led the team in aces. No, she didn't. Sydney Hernandez did, but she ended up tying. She also had 2. So that was really cool to see. Lauren Hovey is just that piece that you want to build around. She's going to be here for another year or 2. We don't know exactly about eligibility, but she's got one more year for sure. And what's going to happen now? This is a team that can win the MAC tournament championship right now. It's just so good to have.
Yeah, it's really interesting looking at probably the two sports that I would say we spend the most time talking about have a couple of juniors that are both in contention among the best players to ever play those sports here, and Lauren Hovey and, of course, Harold Fannin, as we've talked at length about. Look ahead for me a little bit, Chaz. What have we got coming up? So
Ben and I were talking about this off air. The Falcons are in a Michigan gauntlet right now. It's all at home, but this past weekend they faced Western Michigan on Friday and Saturday. Then this upcoming week on Thursday, they're going to take on Eastern Michigan, which is no slouch of a team. Eastern find themselves just a game behind the Falcons. They're 4-1. They are very good. I believe, they're the second best team in blocks. They average about 2.6 blocks a set. That's right behind Bowling Green. The Falcons have a very good blocking defense, and Eastern is one of those squads that you're going to need your offense to step up, try to blow past their very solid defense. And then following it up on Friday, Falcons take on another Michigan team. That's going to be Central, and Central also sit at 4-1 in the MAC. They're 10-9 overall, and Central is a very good offensive scoring team. It's almost a flip-flop. You've got good defense on Thursday, then a great offense on Friday, but I think Central will be the hardest test of the year for the Falcons. They've got Western out of the way. Western was a squad that you thought would be the big circle game. Didn't end up being that. I guess you could say Friday it did. But then they've already played one half of their series against Toledo. That's out of the way. Ball State is a team they faced off against. They have a big history with. They end up sweeping them as well. Central is that roadblock. That is the one game for the rest of the MAC schedule where you say the Falcons might be in a bit of trouble. Then they travel. This is looking a little bit ahead. They travel to Buffalo after that. That's almost a full week of rest. But once they get those Central and Buffalo games out of the way, their schedule looks a little bit easier, and then that's when you can start looking and predicting for what the Falcons are going to do if they end up making the MAC tournament.
I still think they've already gotten through the gauntlet of their schedule, especially because they handed 2 losses to Western. I mean, that essentially, well, one, you took them out of, they were already out of it, but you took them way out of a 1-loss or 2-loss record. Western Michigan had an undefeated record last year. They were the regular season champs, and you just took 2 from them without extreme changes to their roster. They still have the core of their better players back. And Ball State was a team that you faced in the MAC championship. They weren't the best, but certainly aren't the worst. And then Toledo's your rival, and they played very well this weekend as well. They played very well against you. Central and Eastern are very good. I would have to... My notion tells me that one of those teams is going to fall off a little bit. I don't think both of them are going to be top teams in the MAC. I think it's still going to be Bowling Green, Western, Buffalo. Buffalo for sure. Buffalo is a very tough game. I think it's going to be Bowling Green, Western, Buffalo, possibly Ball State, Toledo in that range. So you should feel good about where you are, but you can't play on your heels for sure. You got to keep going. Mia Tyler also, I think she's been like what BG owes so much of their success to her specifically, because 45 kills over the Friday, Saturday, and the Tuesday game, 17 kills, 11 kills, 17 kills, and then against Western she had 19 and 15. She had 15 kills in a 3-set match. So she would have surpassed that 19 kill mark that she set in the 5-set match against Western. She's been consistent. She's been efficient. She's got a decent amount of digs. She's got some blocks too. She's doing a lot. She's been leading point scorer in the last 5 games for the Falcons. I mean, she's like when Mia Tyler turned it up, Bowling Green turned it up, especially coming off of those losses to Ohio State where she had 3 kills combined through 2 games. I mean, just connect the dots. Mia Tyler starts getting her kills, gets the offense going. Bowling Green succeeds as well.
I think that lends itself to, Lauren Hovey is that set in stone person that you can always go to. She's always going to generate points for your squad. She nearly had a double-double yesterday as well with digs. So she was doing it all on Saturday, but they've needed a little bit more of a boost. You can't just build around one person, especially on offense. So to generate a lot of good kills with Tyler, who is no slouch in her own right. Like you mentioned, she led with kills on Saturday. She's been great throughout the week. She was BG News' Athlete of the Week. She was FMSN's Athlete of the Week. So that's a really exciting thing for Bowling Green. They also have Jordan Newblatt, who saw a lot of time on Saturday. She was a junior transfer, or she's a transfer that was brought in to generate offense. So she did very well. And I've been bragging about this for so long. Ben, you've got to be tired of hearing it at this point. I'm blown away by Amanda Otten. As a setter coming in, filling in the spot of Jaden Walls, she has been so good. And her height lends her to being a good blocker as well, which Jaden Walls did not have. Jaden Walls was much smaller. I believe Amanda Otten is 6'2", 6'3". She's 6'3", yeah. She is very, very big. So she had 5 blocks yesterday against Western. That tied the team in blocking assists. She was just 1 block shy of Alexis Mattel. She had 31 assists and 6 kills. That little dunk that she does is so lethal. We saw it against Western. That was one of the things where on the second touch she'll just dink the ball over. A lot of defense does not expect that, and that's just, I don't know. You can tell I'm very excited about what I'm seeing so far from this team. There's kind of getting everything going at the right time.
I'm going to make a hot take here, because watching Western Michigan over the weekend, Logan Case is, I believe, 2-time MAC setter of the year. I think Amanda Otten's a better setter in the MAC right now than Logan Case is. Her versatility
is a very hot take.
Her versatility is better. Logan Case doesn't get the blocks. Logan Case doesn't get the kills. Amanda Otten rivals her in assists. She puts it on the better spot. And they went head-to-head, and Amanda Otten just simply played better than Logan Case did. I mean, you can't argue with what we've seen. And, I think by the end of the season, if it'll be very close. I think your 1-2 punch for MAC setter of the year is going to be Amanda Otten and Logan Case.
I will say Logan Case did lead the nation in assists last year.
She did.
So that is a very hot take to say. Yeah. I think something else I want to add too is I don't think people exactly realize how good Mia Tyler's been this year. Lauren Hovey, we talk
She's
about.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Yeah, we talk about Lauren Hovey all the time. Mia Tyler's been over in the MAC. Mia Tyler's been the best player on the team.
Yeah, we talk about Hovey a ton. Hovey has 174 kills this year. Mia Tyler has 156. She's 18 behind Hovey.
And
kills.
she was sub-triple digits 4 games ago.
Yeah.
She was far behind Lauren Hovey, and now she's right there.
I think it was a few weeks ago we talked on this show about adding that second weapon, that you need the secondary weapon for Hovey.
Yeah.
We didn't know who it would be. We didn't know if it would be Tyler or someone else.
I mentioned middle blockers specifically.
Yeah.
Who they stepped up a little bit,
but Mia Tyler's.
You need somebody opposite of. Well, I mean, not to say the pun and opposite, but you need somebody opposite of Lauren Hovey.
Mia Tyler though has stepped up into that role.
Somebody's going to be one of the two is going to be the kill leader every game. Yes. I almost guarantee it because blockers can't cover both sides. You can't
and if Amanda Otten keeps playing the way that she's been playing,
I know over the middle,
is a dangerous team.
You can't get two blockers to both sides. You just can't. This is what we saw when I did my preseason with Daniela Tomic. She said her and libero Lindsay LaPinta said this is the best squad. Lindsay LaPinta, who's been here for 4 years, said this is the best squad she thinks she's had in all 4 years.
Remember when we talked about this team struggling, being
yeah.
in a rut? I think people forget.
And then they got
good.
smacked by Ohio State and played a good game at home, but then got smacked on the road. And we were talking like, all right, well, like what are we gonna do?
I think people forget though how good Daniela Tomic is.
Oh my gosh,
like
it's just unreal.
If you have a Daniela Tomic team, you are at that point
I
where
need a Daniela Tomic T-shirt.
You're at that point though where it's like you trust that she will get the ship righted, and she has, and it's just time. This was, I think, the most new players in a long time that she's had on this team, so just took them a little bit of time. But I mean, if they keep playing like this, and we were talking about before the show off the air, who has the best chance out of any BG team to win the conference?
It's tough to not say.
Tough to not say volleyball.
Yeah,
well,
it is.
I think you have, if you're basing it off that, you have to go with who's been there before. And you mentioned Lindsay LaPinta, Ben. She has a ring from the MAC tournament championship.
She said that this is the best squad she's had.
And that's exciting to hear. I mean, LaPinta has been balling out in her own right. It's just, I don't think the ship was ever wronged either. I think it's more just with how the Falcons had scheduled their non-conference schedule, you had very big games. You had a game against a ranked team in Dayton. You go to Ohio State. You're on the road for a majority of it. This is, you face off against two Big Ten teams, a Big 12 team. There's a lot of talent. There might be, you could argue, a talent discrepancy, but with how Coach Tomic has recruited and built this squad, I think from what I've seen in my 2-ish years of covering Falcon volleyball, it is one of the best squads that I have seen. Mia Tyler stepping up, Lauren Hovey so good, and I mean, Lauren Hovey is a MAC Player of the Year candidate at this point. I mean, you could say Mia Tyler as well with how good they've both been.
I think when you're talking about, though, that the ship was never wronged, I think this program has been so good for so long that even a little bit of a stretch where you're not winning every single game or 3 out of every 4 games, like it's almost, you just go like, whoa.
It's almost like the opposite of what we talked about last week with football.
It is.
And that like football, we talked about them having one bad game, and then all of a sudden we're talking like, all right, well, like this isn't good. But like volleyball, we talked about after Ohio State. I wasn't in to talk about Ohio State, but I know from myself and what I had heard, everybody was like, well, this sucks. We got smacked by Ohio State on the road, but there's still some trust there that Daniela Tomic will be able to wrangle him back in, and she did. Whether that was something she did or whether the girls were just excited for MAC play and started to turn it up. It was just impressive so far. We haven't seen every team in the MAC yet. Buffalo is the one that concerns me, but out of the teams we've seen, Toledo, Ball State, Western Michigan, they're all top 4 teams in the MAC, or I think they will be by the end of the season, especially Western, who's projected preseason number 1. We've sunk them to 1-3 now against losses to Buffalo and Bowling Green. They had a tough schedule, but they still lost. Unless Buffalo like really impresses me, I'd have a tough. You would be tough, hard pressed to find a MAC roster that's better than Bowling Green's.
Ben, you had your hot take. I think it's time for mine. I think the Falcons, with how their schedule has shook out and how they've played so far, will be undefeated in MAC play.
Wow. I don't hate it. I don't hate it.
I mean, you gotta travel to Buffalo. That is your hardest game remaining
tough.
on the schedule.
And a long weekend too.
But then you have Akron, Kent, Miami, all kind of bottom feeder squads.
Kent twice, Miami twice, Toledo at home, and you already beat them.
At home as well. You don't have to go to Savage Arena, which, I mean, we were there. It wasn't the most ruckus environment.
Very different environment.
And
NIU after Toledo is bad. Like we can say it, they're bad. And Ohio they're like Ohio always is. They're going to be good enough to beat some teams. They can break some hearts here and there, but they're not necessarily like Western Buffalo caliber.
I will say, beginning of the season, I felt like this team was playing with certain players kind of playing well, and the team wasn't playing as a unit. This team is not playing as a cohesive unit. So
they won against Western with Edita Vasławczyk and Maria Tabak in the game.
Yeah,
and Vasławczyk has never played before this year in a uniform. She hasn't stepped on the court, and Tabak is a junior that they picked up off the transfer portal. And I mean, she's got enough trust for Danielle to put them in a game that it's tight. To
be fair with that, though, that was almost a situation where they needed a spark going. It was 2-0 in the game. They took Amanda Otten out. They put in Anna Shitek. They needed to try something fresh, and I feel like once they got into that third set, you rattled a couple cages with Lauren Hovey. You got that spark back. They weren't complacent anymore, and then that's when they just stepped on the gas and took over. Not trying to take anything away from Maria Tabak or Edita Vasławczyk. Just it's so deep. That roster is really so good.
They've controlled 6 sets in a row. They controlled the 3 sets at the end of the Toledo game. They controlled a full game against Ball State, less some. So what games have they not controlled so far? I mean, you can only say the first game against Ball State, and then besides that, even against Western in the 5-set match, we talked about this, Chaz, on the broadcast. They played tight with Western for the first 2. They didn't win them, but they played tight. So if you qualify those 2 sets as a wash, and then they dominated the next 3, they very much outplayed Western Michigan and won in the 5-set match, and then in the second one in only 3. So,
and we mentioned it a little bit with football. At the end of the day, a win is a win.
It is.
And the fact that they didn't control the match against Ball State, they still walked out of there with a W, and they were able to just stick around long enough. That's what they did against Western. Just stick around. You can outlast. The athletic capability of this team is just straight up different. It is. They're going to 5 sets. They're going the distance where other squads are just. You can't expect to stick around that long, and they're controlling it. They are looking dominant. That is such a big key for this Bowling Green Falcon squad.
Big 3 games coming up.
Big 3.
And looking ahead at those big 3 games, you don't want to ever expect to assume the worst. But something that really lingers in my head because of last year is they got on a pretty strong skid with, I would argue, still a very talented roster last year. They dropped, after winning the conference opener against Northern Illinois, they dropped 6 in a row and really had to fight tooth and nail to get back to the 6th seed for the tournament. What do you think? How do they avoid that? It's easy to ride high on good play. And, when you're playing good, obviously you're going to feel good about yourself. But then sometimes, you may look ahead and lose sight of things in front of you. What do you think?
Honestly, what scares me is not the Eastern, Central, and Buffalo games. It's the games against Kent State, who's decent, and to end the year, Ohio. That I think if you're, like Chaz made the hot take, I don't think it's that bad that they could go undefeated. I don't think it's going to be. It could be, but I don't think it's going to be Eastern, Central, or Buffalo that spoils it. I think it's going to be one of those teams down the road when you have that huge buffer of games that you're going to maybe play on your heels. Every team does it. I mean, you can't win them all. It was immaculate that Western did it last year. What are the odds that we get 2 in a row? So I think it's going to be one of those teams you're playing on your heels a little bit and you drop one. I mean, that would be my take.
I feel like Kent's not in that discussion looking at because I admittedly wasn't familiar with their season thus far, but from conference play, loss 2-3, loss in a sweep, loss at Buffalo in a sweep, loss in a sweep at Buffalo. They've got 1 win on the year against NJIT.
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, anything
But again,
can happen.
Buffalo's top.
But Buffalo's top. I would agree with that one.
So yeah, it's again, it's tough to say. That would just be my take on it. You can't take your foot off the gas would be the overarching You just have to go through it. You have to play every game like it's Western Michigan because you played well against Western Michigan. Why change what isn't broken?
And I think to kind of answer your initial question, that skid that happened for the Falcons last year was really marred by injury. They had a lot of different players that were taken out. Just unfortunately, Jessica Andrews, I know, had a hand injury. I believe Mia Tyler was also banged up. They had
Amanda Otten
as well. Yeah. Petra Androva was lost before the season even started, and she was the Lauren Hovey before Lauren Hovey. She was that big name, and so that team was already going into the MAC schedule just banged up and on that skid. It was a big story that they were able to pull up out of that rut and then go into the MAC tournament and then make the championship. This team has been there before, time and time again. Coach Tomich does such a good job of not getting too down or too high, and I think the fact that they're just always in the middle, they're never expecting too much or too little, is what will keep them prepared for those matches against Kent State, or like almost a trap game situation where not the best team, not the worst team, but they're ready. They're not gonna kind of lay on that buffer of games if they make it there undefeated.
One last thing that I want to inquire to both of you volleyball beats, although it can be open to the other two as well. Who do you think is the most, not just looking at these upcoming few games, games we might lose, but to win the MAC tournament, who do you think is the biggest threat to Bowling Green?
I honestly, right now, I would say it would be either Buffalo or Central Michigan. I think Central Michigan, Ben, you mentioned it, Eastern and Central, one of those teams are expected to fall off. Eastern they do
by me.
well.
I'm not saying that they will.
No,
I'm
no,
saying
no,
that would be my
sources are saying.
Yeah,
but
sources being Ben.
I mean, let's see if your prediction holds true. But I think Eastern defensively, that's really all they've got. Central is just deep all the way through. I think Central is just a very spooky team. They hadn't lost a set up until Friday in the MAC play, which is kind of wild. So just as a whole, Central scary. Ball State, another team that has been there before, or not Ball State, Buffalo, excuse me, a team that has been there before. Ball State in their own right. I think the state of MAC volleyball right now is in a very good spot. Toledo looked very good, but if I had to wager a guess, I'd say Central. But I'm just looking at it. It is very good. Western Michigan still has the reigning MAC Player of the Year, MAC Defensive Player of the Year. There's just so much, but I don't know.
We'll be able to tell after this coming week when we see Eastern and Central in person.
That's a good call.
What the play, maybe even Buffalo. We'll have to see. I watching the Toledo game, amazing that they came back and won. I don't think they should have won the Toledo game. I think Toledo's got great blockers. I think they have great hitters. Their back row is pretty decent as well. They have some flaws, but who doesn't? I would say regular season, not necessarily Toledo. I would say a regular season, you're looking at the Michigans, Eastern and Central, maybe Ohio to end the year. In the tournament, I think Toledo's the one, especially with no divisions anymore, because you're slated to play. I think it's definitely, I'd say Toledo. They're the scariest team that I've seen. Like right now, if they had to play one game to win to go undefeated in the MAC, I would prefer that they would play Western Michigan over Toledo.
I agree with that.
That is my Toledo looks so strong, so that's what I would do.
It feels like we're in a really, really interesting intersection in several sports where like the next conference game or the next two is very
huge
indicative of the team.
Just figuring it out.
And we said this last week, but even so, I think the performance for the football team raised, a fair number of questions as much as it answered any of them that we were looking at. And I think it'll be certainly an interesting week to look ahead at. So wrapping up with volleyball here, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, Ben's going to take us through hockey's opening weekend. So don't go anywhere. This is WBGU 88.1 FM. And you're listening to the Zig Zone. We'll be right back.
The Bowling Green Radio Sports Organization is a student-run sports broadcasting organization at Bowling Green State University in Bowling Green, Ohio. Their goal is to provide quality broadcasts while providing more opportunities for students to prepare and learn what goes into a high-quality broadcast. BGRSO calls hundreds of games over the airwaves on WBGU-FM and Falcon Radio and is part of BG Falcon Media.
My name is Kyle Blassingame from BGSU Men's Soccer, and my Falcon 4 favorite hobbies are Kirby, which is a game created by BG Men's Soccer. My second favorite hobby would be Solid IIO. I recently bought a PC and I've been gaming it. My third favorite hobby is playing golf with Kyle Cusimano. And my fourth favorite hobby is watching Game of Thrones with Brendan Graves.
Hey there, BGSU graduate Jason Jackson from the Miami Heat here. Make sure to tune into the Zig Zone every Sunday at 4 p.m. on WBGU 88.1 FM, home of the Falcon Media Sports Network.
Welcome back to the Zig Zone, your home for everything you want to hear and more about everything going on with Bowling Green sports. I'm Holden Ruck, once again, joined by Ben Korak, Reese Patricus, Chaz McNeil, Tyler Kavelitz, a little bit of the Bowling Green alma mater to bring you back in here. And so without further ado, we're going to move on to the rink. Let's talk about some hockey. Ben, take it away.
Yeah, they played their first game of the season.
Mike being on does help.
Yeah,
right?
I know it does help. That's Holden's fault. He's supposed to be running that.
I turned it off during the break.
Throw you under the bus. Yeah, they played their first series of the year against Mercyhurst. Odd schedule for them because they play games for record against Mercyhurst. They played 2, they took 2, but now they go into Robert Morris and Simon Fraser, which are exhibition, as we learned a week ago. So odd scheduling there. They essentially have a bye week or a practice week. But yeah, I think they looked pretty strong. The style and that Dennis Williams said he wanted to procure and instill looked like it worked pretty well. I mean, they came away with 2 wins. They did what he said they were really going to do. Maybe the only thing would be blocking pucks wasn't necessarily the focal point, but that might come as the season goes. And against non-conference games, why get down on your knees, risk injury when you don't necessarily have to. But yeah, I thought it was a very telling weekend. Unfortunately, we couldn't watch it because I don't have Flow Hockey watching the live stats, but saw some guys that I thought were going to do pretty well, and definitely very much enjoyed.
I have a question for you, Ben.
Yes.
And this isn't necessarily about the hockey team, but
Yeah.
you mentioned Flow Hockey.
Yeah.
Which is a worse streaming service? Flow Hockey or Bally Sports? Because I know you as a Tigers fan use
Yeah.
both. Would you rather have Bally Sports or Flow Hockey?
I bought Flow Hockey at the end of last year.
Okay.
I think Flow Hockey's worse.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bally Sports just has some money behind it.
Yeah.
And in which case it's better. It was buying Flow Hockey to watch BG at the end of last year because I finally caved in and bought it. I didn't like it.
What's the price point for
such
Flow
a rough
Hockey?
interface? I think it was like $30 a month for Flow Hockey.
That's crazy.
And I
well,
bought
isn't
it,
Bally
I bought
Sports
it,
Plus is like $75 a month?
But
That's even crazier.
like for me in Detroit, I get to watch the Pistons, Red Wings, and Tigers.
Yeah.
For Flow Hockey, I'm paying $30 a month to watch Bowling Green.
That's fair.
maybe other teams if I really like. I use it for the CCHA championship, which was
Okay.
good because I wrote on those. It was definitely worth the money, but it was the interface was not great.
Okay.
I don't like having. I would rather have local broadcasters call every game. Like Bally Sports, I get to hear for the Tigers Jason Benetti, no matter where it is. If there's a game in Bemidji State, you get Bemidji State broadcasters, and it's biased. And
Yeah.
I would rather have bias toward my own team.
I apologize for
No.
diverting
That was
us from
that was a
course,
good
but
question.
I did really need to know that question because
Yeah.
I'm on record as a Bally Sports hater. So I
No,
should-
that's fair. Yeah.
Who's on record as being the opposite is my question.
I mean,
That's
I
true.
think Fox Sports was the place
Yeah.
to be.
Bring back Sports Time Ohio.
Please.
Bring back Sports Time
I
Ohio.
don't
Please.
have that. We had Fox Sports Detroit.
We had Fox Sports Ohio, but before
Sports
that,
Time Ohio was amazing.
Was it? I
Better than
never,
Bally.
I never partook. I mean, a lot of things are better than Bally, but
So
a lot of
Colmore-
Bally hate on a national. Yeah, this is rough. Okay, so back to hockey.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry about that.
No, you're okay.
Once again, the Zig Zone.
The Zig Zone. Yep. All right, what's your question? Hold on. I'm
So
sorry.
Cole Moore appearing both
Yeah,
of the
she
two
did.
opening games.
I was surprised about that, to be honest. I thought they were certainly going to go Cole Moore for the first game because he's the number one option. I don't think there's any argument about that. And then Christian Stover for the second game. I believe Stover is a senior now, so he's running out of time. And I assumed that they would just see how he does, test the waters a little bit. I think it would have been a better option to go to Christian Stover because Cole Moore didn't have a great second game. He gave up 4 goals, .882 save percentage, I believe, just above the other goalie who gave up 5 goals. But I understand. I mean, he's going to be your number one option, so you might as well get that in. Get him as much time as you possibly can. You do essentially have a bye week. He could start Christian Stover in the exhibitions against Robert Morris and Simon Fraser. So I would be looking for that. But again, I thought he was going to split the goalies this week. So.
Now, what I took away from his press conference was that he was going to go based on performance.
Yes.
For those two. So, do you see it as a thing that he's going to wait until like Cole Moore has a performance like that, or do you think he's going to give him beginning of the season both like 2-3 games in a row and then go after that?
I think it's hard to argue that Cole Moore was not objectively better than Christian Stover. So I think heading into the season, the first, I forget who they play first. It's Ferris State. So against Ferris State as a team, I could see either. I could see him testing the waters with Christian Stover for sure because Ferris State is one of the weaker opponents in the CCHA.
What are the odds you think it's going to be split by period ever, that he would make a mid-game adjustment?
I don't think ever, unless one of the two is getting blown out of the water, or if it's a game that doesn't matter and you just want to get somebody else some time. Just like tell them like, yo, it's just not your day. Eat your Wheaties, go home. One of those kind of things. But I unless like we're not talking about him putting in a goalie mid, we're talking about a bad performance by either one of them instead. So. They're. I don't think they're ever going to split. They might split games. They're not like split series. They're not going to split periods.
And I feel like it's an interesting departure because last year, at least from what I was there for, felt like the opposite. It felt like there were a lot of times where the vibe in the Slater from the fans was, "Hey, we want more. Let's see what the kid can do."
Yeah.
And in those times, oftentimes they would defer to Christian Stover. And
at the beginning of the season, they tried. Because Christian Stover was the hero from the year before. I mean, that's just how it was. I wasn't here, but I looked at the stats. He was how Cole Moore was last year. He was the guy. He was the goalie objectively. Zach Rose was pretty good, but again, he was a freshman, and it was in the same boat as Cole Moore if Stover had played well last year. So I think it was necessity that put Cole Moore in, and he just capitalized on it. He was the third best goaltender in the CCHA as a freshman. That was why at the end of last year when Ty Eigner did not come back, that I was very nervous about Cole Moore leaving because he's got so much potential as such a young player. He could have gone, I'm sure, to a NCHC school and played for maybe been a backup on a North Dakota or something like that, and maybe gave himself some more potential. But last year you didn't know what you had with Cole Moore until he stepped on the ice, and once he did step on the ice, you knew that like this kid's special. I mean, top 3 goaltender in the CCHA as a freshman, like that. You can't argue with that.
Take me through what you're expecting from the teams, and in particular, or from the team, excuse me, and in particular, how good are their chances of winning the conference? What's the competition look like?
I think winning the conference with schedule I don't think it's going to happen. I think when you get into the tournament, anything can happen because it's a tournament. You play best of 3 series. Anything can happen. We know that through any playoff in any sport. I think I think regular season they're going to succeed. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't. The only thing, Minnesota State looks so. They played U of M over the weekend, and they pretty handily held U of M off, and U of M was national championship appearance team. So I mean, that was an impressive display from them. CCHA is tight. It has been the last 3 years. I'm sure it will be this year, even with some departures and some teams getting new looks. So I would say we get a home playoff game based on what I see of the team, what I see of the coach. a home playoff game is top 4 seeds. I think you get top 4 seeds out of BG this year.
Fair enough. Well, we've certainly got a very small sample size as of now, so we'll certainly have to look forward to more of that so we can talk more about that and dig into what the Willie era really looks like.
Yeah, Robert Morris on Thursday, Simon Fraser out of British Columbia on Sunday. Both are in the Slater Family Ice Arena. Both of them are exhibition games, but you can go see the new look Slater Family Ice Arena, see some good games from the Falcons, hopefully 2 wins, some learning experiences, and get to see Willie on the bench.
It is a very cool looking renovated.
It is so cool.
The renovations they made are very nice.
It is so cool.
Ben, I want to ask you really quick, how do you feel about Willie?
I love him. I think I was on record as being that they shouldn't fire Ty Eigner, but I think it was a better hire. Like, they hired the right guy for sure. He's very intense on the ice, but he's also like he's a good personality for the guys. He's a younger guy. He's won at every stop that he's been at, besides his interim coaching gig with Bowling Green. But he didn't have any of his own players and not a lot to work with. So the other 3 stops that he's had, he's succeeded. He coached Bedard and the Canada World Juniors, and he won with Canada in the World Juniors. So, I mean, that's a head coach that has won in the World Juniors, and he came to Bowling Green. This is like top-tier coaching material that Bowling Green just pulled off, and we might see him in an even better spot someday. Hopefully he stays here for as long as we can keep him. We'll see how he does. I don't see any reason why he's not as advertised. So
I just want to step in here and say it's early in the hockey season, but my God, has Derek Vandermeer done a fantastic job at hiring head coaches here in Bowling Green?
Yeah, top to bottom.
You've got top to bottom. You've got
hiring and extending
head
coaches.
You've got. I mean, you just heard what Ben said about Willie. He's won everywhere he's been. Todd Simon was a home run. You gave Kyle Halleck a great extension.
2 extensions.
You gave Leffler an extension. You gave Coach Tomich an extension. And then you bring in also you got
I believe gymnastics has a new head coach.
Gymnastics has a new head coach.
Swim and dive,
softball,
and
women's basketball. Shamil
he brought in
Chris Fox,
and then Chris Fox as well. Top to bottom.
I mean, was there a bad? I mean, it's short sample size, but was there a bad one that we can tell yet?
If you look at the teams that have the hires strictly from him that have played a season, I don't think there's one you can point to that has started anything less than good.
And
I don't think any of them have started less than a winning.
We'll have to see with softball.
Softball, the jury's still out.
Softball,
the jury's still out. I think hockey, the jury is still out because again, you've only played 2 games, but it's looking to me, at least on paper, like every hire that Vandermeer has made in his time here, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's just under 2 years. Yeah,
it is.
It's
just October 22nd will be the 2-year mark.
Just in under 2 years from being hired here in Bowling Green, he has done a fantastic job at finding and retaining head coaches.
Look about what we're talking about on the Zig Zone every week. It's who has the best chance of making, winning a conference title. Yeah. And there's no bad answer.
Usually
really.
Everyone has a different answer.
Yeah, normally, yeah. I mean, it changes week to week based on performances, but there isn't a bad answer. You could say, as Holden said, women's cross country, and everybody be like, all right, that's not bad.
And if you look at other schools in the conference, that's not holistically true at all.
No, because
are in a really unique position to be able to say that at all.
You look at certain teams like the Kent States of the world or the Akrons of the world, they have dynamite basketball programs, but on the football field, they're certainly not at the top of the conference. For Akron, they're not great at baseball. Kent State has a great baseball program, and they have for as long as I can remember. But
Akron's always had a good men's soccer, but the women's soccer's not good.
Yep. Yeah. Women's volleyball, I don't think Akron. I don't remember Akron ever being good.
No.
So you were in a very great position here in Bowling Green, and for a school that has, from at least the history that I can remember, which dates back, probably about 5 years, if I'm going to be very honest. There hasn't been a situation like this where every sport is in a position to win a title, because you go back 5 years, and in 2019, or I guess, yeah, in 2019, that was Scott Loeffler's first year as the head coach for football, and he had a Mike Jinks team, and then baseball lost their program because they had no funding because they weren't great. And then you look at the last couple of years of the Michael Huger era for men's basketball. Not fantastic. And now we have a point where men's basketball is a legitimate MAC title contender. Baseball is a legitimate MAC title contender. Football.
Baseball already has a MAC title regular season under the belt.
So just to make a long conversation short, Derek Vandermeer, fantastic job at finding head coaching talent over the last under 2 years.
All right, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to go over our last topic question, which is going to be, who do you think in the next week until we go on this show is going to be the biggest standout performer as an athlete? And I say standout performer because we're used to 100 yards and a touchdown from Harold Fannin is the standard. Breaking 15 million records for Lauren Hovey is the standard. So, like, above what we've seen from them, or stand out, something that we haven't come to expect. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back and go over the upcoming schedule and answer that question. Don't go anywhere. You're still listening to the Zig Zone on WBGU 88.1 FM.
Falcon Communications is the student-run public relations firm of BGSU Public Relations Student Society of America and BG Falcon Media. Those who join the firm create social media and feature story content for the BG News, BG24, WBGU FM, and the Bowling Green Radio Sports Organization. For each Falcon Media brand, Falcon Communication members help coordinate special events and create strategies for how to best market those events to the university community.
Welcome back one more time to the Zig Zone, your show with all the details on all of BG athletics. I asked our Ben Korak, Reese Patricus, Chaz McNeil, and Tyler Kavelitz before the break, who in the next week of BG athletics do you think is going to have the greatest standout performance? Tyler, you look itching to turn your mic on. Let's hear it.
I'm going football, but I'm not doing what you think. I'm not going Fannin. I'm not going Oladokin. I'm not doing Terrion.
Well, standout from Fannin would be approximately 300 yards at this point.
I'm not doing Bazelak. I am going Jackson Cleather. I think Jackson Cleather hits a game-winning field goal to beat Northern Illinois.
Clip that right now.
I like that.
Clip it right now.
I think Jackson
1
Cleather...
1 hour 57, Tyler, when we're looking at this later.
Okay.
Jackson Cleather, I don't know how long it's going to be. I don't know what the score is going to be. I don't know if it's going to be as time's running out or it's just going to be the one that ends up winning the game. He is going to hit a game-winning field goal against Northern Illinois. Book it.
Wow.
Okay, I'll go ahead with mine, and it's also football. And I'm going to stay at the tight end position. And it's not going to be Harold Fannin because, like you said, it's a standout game from Harold Fannin at this point would be 250 yards, 3 touchdowns on 4 catches,
which will probably happen.
Basically break an NCAA record.
He would essentially have to have the greatest tight end game of all time. But I digress. I'm gonna go Levi Gazaric. He has seen
love that pick.
He has seen a substantial uptick in targets and catches since the Fordham game, and really since the Penn State game. I feel like we've seen him on the field a little bit more since week 2. And especially if Harold ends up getting blanketed, you're going to need to find that safety valve. And I think who else to go to than your big tight end who's just going to be hanging around 5 yards from the line of scrimmage.
And keep an eye out on him. Look up his number before the game. Keep an eye out on him. He is a great blocking tight end.
That's another thing. Is if you want to get the run game going, he's going to have to step up.
If you remember the Peggy's return, Jason Patterson with the block.
Mm-hmm.
Who's to say that Levi Gazaric's not going to have a moment like that?
Mm-hmm.
I'll go next. I'll be a little bit boring. I hate to go with the sport I cover, but I am going to go volleyball. And I think Eastern Michigan is a very solid blocking team, as we mentioned before. But it's going to be the battle of the blockers on Thursday. And I think Alexis Mattil will be the standout. She has one of the highest hitting percentages in all of the MAC. I believe she sits second right now behind a Buffalo player. But her blocking ability is insanely good. She was, I believe she, correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, you were there. She was a all-tournament team for the UIC DePaul tournament.
Yeah.
I go her.
Yeah, that's I think that's a pretty good pick. I'm really trying to think. Those were, I'm not gonna lie, I thought of Jackson Cleather for football, and then Tyler said it, and I took it away.
Two people picking the kicker. Wow.
There we go. I do like Alexis Matilla. I was thinking a middle blocker, so I won't take one. I'm gonna go very, very bold with mine. It's an exhibition game. I think he's going to be shooting. I think Maxwell Martin, if you don't know his name, you probably don't, freshman for Bowling Green hockey, I think he's going to get a couple goals. He's an NAHL MVP. He already got an assist over the weekend, but didn't get a whole lot of chances. I think he gets a couple of goals over the weekend against Robert Morris and Simon Fraser. He's just impressive, lightning fast. That would be my pick. Hot take, bold take. A lot of people probably don't know his name, but look out this weekend for him. Go to Slater Family Ice Arena and watch, or WBGU 88.1 FM. Listen up.
We'll go through my pick here. I'm going to pick in the world of men's soccer. They play at home this Tuesday against the 1-7-2 overall Detroit Mercy, which by all accounts is just a fairly weak team that the Falcons should be able to take care of business against. And so I'm going to go with Bennett Painter. We've seen him have 2 goals against NIU in an important conference opener. And Trace Terry is the leading goal scorer, probably the guy that garners the more attention. I think Bennett Painter is due for another big day. So Jackson Cleather, Bennett Painter, Alexis Mattil. Who'd you have again? Levi Gazaric.
Levi Gazaric. There we go.
Don't sleep on Levi.
Maxwell Martin.
And I will say another player to watch just in the closing seconds. Watch out for number 18 on offense, Win Sharp, true freshman, seen a lot of playing time. If we want those receivers to step up, he's going to have to be a guy who's going to have to step up.
All right, well, that's going to about do it for us. In home action this week, you can catch the men's soccer team this Tuesday at Cochran Stadium. The volleyball team will be home on Thursday against Eastern Michigan. And the football team is going to be at Dwight Perry Stadium this Saturday for a game against NIU. Hockey will play an exhibition at the Slater this Thursday. That does it for us for the Zig Zone. It's been Tyler Kavelitz, Chaz McNeil, Reese Patrikis, Ben Korek. I'm Holden Ruck. Thank you for tuning into the Zig Zone here on WBGU 88.1 FM. And as always, Isaac Izumba.
This broadcast has been a Falcon Media Sports Network production. For more BGSU sports news and updates, follow Falcon Media Sports Network on Twitter X at BG_FMSN, BG Falcon Media on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and head over to BGFalconMedia.com.